Hello and welcome to Tommy Surfs. Today, as promised, is the second video of the evaluation of the FRK Plus, but in ocean conditions. Now, if you've watched the other video, you'll know that it was done at the Waco surf pool. I'll put the link up here so in case you haven't watched it. Now, the very first thing I need to cover is if you've watched any other video about this board, the FRK Plus, you'll hear Kelly Slater, Chewy Reyna, and a few other reviews talk about it being a step down from the FRK. So the FRK Plus, the plus actually means it's slightly bigger, slightly wider, slightly more volume than the FRK. So those kind of attributes means that it's a groveler. So for a professional, it is a step down. However, for the good majority of us, this is a pretty high performance surfboard. I created a graph, and I don't know how accurate it is, and you can tell me what you think of it, but this is the best visual interpretation I could do for you. Okay, so basically I put the FRK on top, I put the FRK Plus on bottom. Now the red curved lines indicates the feeling of a board, okay, the performance of a board, or whatever however you want to, the way it surfs, I guess that's the best way to put it. And so what you want to pay attention to aren't the lines, but the gap between the two red lines. So someone like a pro would feel a massive difference between these two boards, even though they're very similar. And then someone like an intermediate will feel very little difference between those two boards. So now I mentioned this in the previous video. For me, what I found is that this board isn't necessarily a step down from the FRK. The FRK Plus for me is pretty much as high of a performance board that I probably would ever want to go. Okay, so what I see this board as is actually a step up from the Dominator 2 or the mashup or whatever. Even a step up from my Sharp Eye FT. The one that I reviewed. I'll put the link up here. So now on the first few waves, I just wanted to show how it caught waves. At 18.5, it just requires a tad more power, a tad more speed to get to planing speed. Okay, but once you're up to planing speed, it's like any other board, right? The wider the board, the less energy and power you need to get to planing speed. Now I did notice that because it took a little bit more effort, not much, I just found myself timing it in a steeper part of the wave to take off rather than trying to paddle and get the board to speed. I let the wave do more of the work. So this was actually the very first day that I got to surf it in the ocean, and it was kind of an interesting day. The takeoff had a steep section, so it was kind of easy to get into waves. And if I got in early enough, I got a okay maneuver at the start. But one thing I noticed here is that how effortless the rail to rail was, like just kind of tic-tacking and transitioning my weight toe to heel. Because it's so narrow, it's just very performance oriented. Also the width, because it's narrow, I mean if I just stood there, it wouldn't plane as well as something that's wider. But if you know how to use your fins and you know how to use your rails to generate speed, this does pretty well to actually get through certain flat sections. So now day 2 was the most challenging day. It was the smallest, the shape wasn't that great, but the board performed well. Again, it was just a little bit of a challenge trying to get into some of these waves, but overall once I was up and planing and had the speed, easy to drive for speed. And here I even try a little air, poorly, but the board felt really good. Now, in fact, the one thing I do regret is buying this in 5.8. I bought it with the pool in mind at Waco, and what I should have done is kind of planned for the ocean, which I think I would have got the 5.9, possibly even a 5.10. I think 5.9 was 28 liters. Now, in all honesty, on a day like this, I would probably take out something a little bit smarter, like the mashup or my twice baked. So now on day 3, this is a very bad day at trestles, but something I discover about the board here is how springy it is and how lively it felt. Now look how quick off the bottom I come off, and I actually get to pull off the lip. So yeah, definitely this board is high performance. Really easy to go rail to rail at 18.5 inches wide. And then right here, I don't even paddle. I actually, you know, if you time it right, you don't, you know, the board has enough volume. Even with the whole planing, you know, being narrow, at the right spots, it can effortlessly catch waves. So I should mention, up until now, I was riding this board as a thruster, and today, in this overcast day, I'm riding it as a quad. And in both cases, I'm using the NVS Dan Mann Mann Kind thrusters. And those fins are fantastic. Plenty of drive. And I kind of like, for these, you know, mushier, soft, smaller days, the types of waves I surf, kind of a bigger fin. And the Dan Mann fins are pretty large, slightly raked back, and it's got a broad tip. So it allows for the fin to grab when you need it. And normally I don't really like thrusters, especially on a performance shape. So, you know, this is actually doing really well to give me the performance I need. And it is pretty high performance. And the one thing I noticed about it is it's really turned on my backhand surfing. Like, normally I suck backhand, and you know, you guys have seen it, but got to practice it at the pool. Oh, and look at this one. I don't know what I was going for. Definitely wasn't an error. I got to practice the backhand at the pool, and I get to apply it on this particular day, and I felt really good about it. So this is one of my longer waves. I think I get like 3 turns. Then I have this, you know, flat section, and this is where a board has to prove itself to me for Bolsa Chica. And this is where I see that, you know what, as performance as it is somewhat of a decent groveler. I just probably needed something a little bit longer and a little bit more volume. So yeah, if you are looking for it as a step down to something, perfect if you're an advanced surfer. But the beauty of this is, you know, if you're like myself or a low-end intermediate, a high-end intermediate, plenty of performance. Just get it a little bit bigger. Okay, get the volume you need. So all in all, I believe this board is a winner. And just, you know, make sure you size up. And look at the performance that you get out of this. Look at this nice open face carve. Second turn. I was actually going to go for a third turn, but my friend was on the inside. I don't want to run him over. It is definitely a performance board. And if you, again, size up, I think it'll grovel just fine too. I just don't. I want you to just think of the whole, you know, step down theory. Just kind of get that out of your head, especially if you're an intermediate surfer. Okay, it's more of a step up, but with enough volume, you could still grovel. But definitely, from what you're probably used to riding, the narrowness of this board and the basic design of this board, it's going to be more performance. So just think of it that way. It's a groveling performance board. All right. So I hope you liked the video. Like, subscribe if you haven't already, and until the next one.